The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by our free bracket challenge, $2,000 winner take all. And today at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/bracket. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently Thursday night, roughly 8:35 p.m. Pacific time, because I'm in Vegas on March 20th. The host of this episode, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the second round of the Miami Open. So we're going to recap what happened in the first round, then get into some, not all, of the matches for the second round, and then we'll wrap up the show with our lock and dog picks. Anyway, starting off with the actual lock and dog picks. Overall, a decent episode. Should have been a sweep. Really annoying loss there for the dog, but either way did hit the lock as we ended up having Bublik to win -1.5 games at -150, and that got there easily. Could have taken 2.5, 3.5, whatever number you wanted. Bublik ended up destroying Baez, and he got the job done there in straight sets. Got a little bit, I'd say, conservative, just based on Bublik being a head case, but he owned the entire match, and he was able to dominate as Baez lost his 11th straight hardcourt match. So nice win there for Bublik. For the dog, though, heartbreaker. We had the Bergs and Borges over 2.5 sets at +150. We were cruising as Bergs won the first set in a breaker. Borges did lead 5-2 in the second set. He had a set point as well, and he choked it. He lost the final 5 games. So he went from up 5-2 to losing 5-7. And that was how he ended up losing the dog. So we were 1 point away. We had a multiple game cushion, and Borges completely fell apart as we ended up losing the dog there. Pretty annoying, but once again hit the lock. Been a good run for locks lately. Try to keep it rolling here in the second round. Now, before we get into the actual breakdown of the first round in a bit more depth, I want to remind you once again that you can support the show by subscribing on YouTube. A reminder, you guys leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. Trying to get to around 900 subscribers. I think we're in the 850s. So hopefully you can help us get there at some point. But either way, point is, if you do like the show, don't forget to like the video and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening to the podcast audio only, that's fine too on Spotify or Apple. Just don't forget to leave a rating and a review to help the show grow. Plus, a reminder, check out the merch store on the SGPN website. We have all the great Tennis Gambling Podcast merch. We have sweatshirts, t-shirts, and mugs. So if you want an example, this shirt, you can get it on the SGPN website, and we have different colors as well. But definitely recommend getting something. Very, very comfortable, very, very breathable fabric. I recommend, and I do think that it's a very, very comfortable shirt. So if you do want to get one of those, you know where to find it. Check out the merch store on the SGPN website. Now, also a reminder, for the promos that we have going on right now, you can compete against SGPN this March in our 75K winner-take-all college basketball survivor contest. March has never been this exciting. Enter at splashsports.com/SGPN. That's splashsports.com/SGPN. And a reminder, if you do use the promo code FINALS, you can use it for a $10 bonus credit. Anyway, so point is, time to start off with the actual recap of what happened in the first round. Overall, I'd say there wasn't too much drama. The first day was full of a couple of close matches, but nothing now was really shocking, per se. Saw Goffin beat Vukic in 3. Hijikata pulled off an upset against Medjedovic in 3, which was a bit surprising to me. And then I'm seeing Monfils beat Morozin in a fun 3-setter. Comasagna ended up losing to Sina, which was a bit of a shocker there, as Comasagna was -250, and he ended up losing in 2 tiebreaks. Saw Ugo Carabelli win against Holt. Saw Kyrgios win his first match in a couple of years, as he was able to come back and beat McDonald in 3. That was pretty shocking, but good win for him. Baena did a win in 3 against O'Connell, and besides that, you ended up seeing Kekmanovic beat Kovacevic. You saw Munar beat Rinderknech. You saw Hallis beat Seaboth Wild. Nothing else too shocking on the first day of the tournament. And we're looking at the second day. A couple of close matches early, as we ended up having Fernley beating Bonzi in a 3-set marathon. So Tarante beat Caboli after being a late fill-in for Jari. He got the job done there in 3. Saw Bergs beat Borges in straight sets, mentioned it before. Saw Pelka beat Eubanks. I've been 100% right on Eubanks for the last couple of years. I know that he peaked in Wimbledon a couple of years ago. He's a much better broadcaster than tennis player, and he's outside the top 100 for a reason. He's not very good. So nice win by Opelka there. You ended up seeing Nishikori drop out, I believe, of the event, and Nishioka ended up losing to Gaston. Pretty weird spot, by the way, because Nishikori ended up retiring or withdrawing from the event. So Nishioka had a different opponent, and he got injured, and he retired mid-match. So that's kind of a bit weird, but Gaston advanced via retirement. Ended up seeing a withdrawal from Greek Sport as well, as he ended up getting a spot filled by Diallo, who ended up beating Echeverry in straight sets. Besides that, Nori did lose to Bu in straight sets. Saw Thompson beat Giron in a competitive 3. And you saw Fekina beat Struff. Saw Sonigo beat Navone. You saw Brooksby losing 3 to Safulin in a pretty fun match. You had Arnaldi beating Wu in 3 sets. Good to see Yibbing back, though, but Arnaldi did beat him in 3. Fonseca, though, did beat Tieno, what could have been the match of the day, as he ended up winning that one in 3. Very, very fun, but Fonseca seems to always get the better of Tien, but 2 very solid young players that should be good for a long time. And you saw Mensik beat Agut in 3 sets, 6-1 in the final set. So once again, really not much drama. Of course, all of the main, I'd say, star attraction players did not play in the first round because they got buys. But you had a couple of fun matches, a couple of straightforward matches, and kind of met in the middle for a pretty average, I'd say, first round. But anyway, hopefully the second round's a bit more competitive, and hopefully we got a couple of great matches that we end up getting to watch between, no offense, I'd say, more talented players. The first round of these major events are always fun, but the problem is you have a lot of very talented players waiting in the wings who are waiting after the bye to potentially dominate in the second round. So I'll see what happens. I see a couple of comments here. I see Savage stopping by. Thanks for once again stopping by the show. Uneducated, welcome back. Yeah, Vegas has been fun so far. Can't complain. Been hanging out with the SGPN guys a lot. To be honest, my bracket was awful today. So that's kind of the, I'd say, sour note of the actual trip right now, is just the bracket being a mess. But the actual, I'd say, time spent with the guys at SGPN has been a lot of fun. And once again, I recommend you coming out to Vegas sometime with us in the future. I see Bitsy mentioned the over in games as well, instead of the actual over 2.5 sets. That worked out for you. So nice win there for you. Once again, happy you can cash there, even though I could not. And I see Beantown mentioning the courts playing fast in Miami. Definitely true. Of course, everything seems to look faster right after Indian Wells, but we know that they increase the speed of the courts in Indian Wells, but Miami's playing very fast in the heat there in Florida, and I do think that maybe you're onto something there with the first half overs, or maybe just overs in matches in general, but it does seem like the heat is playing a factor, and I think it should play a factor moving forward in the future. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the actual recap of the first round. Now it's time for the preview of the second round. For that, though, I remember once again that we are brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings is a great place to go to for college basketball and March Mania. One thing is for sure, nothing is for sure. Upsets, buzzer beaters, Cinderella's advancing, top seeds going home early. It's all going to happen. Bet the unexpected, every upset, every day with DraftKings Sportsbook. With live betting, exclusive content, promos, and parlays, DraftKings is the ultimate college basketball destination for March. First time, here's something special for you. New customers, bet $5, get $200 in bonus instantly. And a reminder that you can bet the unexpected with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use code SGP. Code SGP for new customers to get $200 in bonus instantly when you bet just $5 only on a DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
We're also brought to you by Rhythm. A reminder that Rhythm is giving away a fun $250 March Madness future for one lucky Rhythm user. And a reminder that if you cannot make the actual party, if you did not make it earlier this past week, that's fine. You can still be entered into the random drawing. And a reminder that you can still get a chance to get $250 future bet. When you sign up with Rhythm, go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/party for details. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished recapping the first round. Time to move on into the second round. We have a ton of fun matches that should be intriguing, but I'm not going to cover all of them. I am going to cover some of them instead. Starting off with the first match on the actual show, going to go with the Ruud and Kekmanovic match, which looks pretty fun, just based on the overall matchup. Ruud is a favorite, -143. Kekmanovic at +123. You see the spread being -1.5 for Ruud, +1.5 for Kekmanovic. The over-under in games is set at 22.5. For the set spread, if you want to look at it, you can get Ruud in straight sets at +170. Kekmanovic winning straight sets at +260. The over 2.5 sets is a +130. Now, Ruud, of course, had a bye in the first round. Kekmanovic had a very easy win in his match as he ended up beating the likes of Kovacevic in straight sets. Now, the head-to-head's been competitive. It is 3-3. Kekmanovic did win the most recent meeting in Rome back in 2024. Lost the first set via bagel, then came back and he did win. The interesting part, though, is they have faced off 2 times in their careers on hard court, and Kekmanovic is actually currently 2-0. Now, one was in the Next Gen Finals, which was the first to 4 games instead of first to 6, which doesn't really count. Faced off in an event before that, though, and Ruud retired after the first set. So they've not faced off on hard court in basically 5 years, so just something to keep in mind. But the point is, Kekmanovic has been playing good tennis recently, did win in Delray, had a very successful year, which is good to see. Did end up beating Kovacevic, who has been playing pretty good tennis as well recently, and he had a bit of a marathon loss there to a Greek sport in 3 sets in the first round of Indian Wells. But the point is, we know Griekspoor's been playing good tennis. We know that Kecmanovic did win a title a couple weeks ago. He's in good form. Ruud, though, has been fine. Nothing great. He looked good in Dallas as he lost to Shapo eventually, then ended up beating Rinderknech in straight sets in Acapulco, then had the food poisoning, had to quit, faced off against Giron in Indian Wells, lost in the first match. So the point is, Ruud has really not played that well lately, and Kecmanovic has. But the head-to-head experience might not matter too much because they have not faced off on hard court in a while. But the most recent meeting on clay, which is still Ruud's favorite surface, was Kecmanovic, who beat him in 3 sets. So I think that there's some life here with the dog. I'll go with Kecmanovic to keep it close and to potentially win the match outright at plus 123. I like the over, though. I think 22.5 games is too low. I don't mind the sets as well at 2.5 at plus 130. Give me the over, and I'll go with the dog here to keep it close for Ruud to maybe underachieve once again on Friday. Moving on to the next match we're going to talk about. You have a matchup between, skipping around a little bit, we'll go with Kyrgios against Khachanov. Now, this is a bit of a surprise because I think most people thought that Kyrgios, after hurting his wrist in Indian Wells, would probably take some time off. But he actually won a match, which was kind of shocking, as he ended up beating McDonald in 3. He's a big dog, though, in this one. You have Khachanov at minus 270. You have Kyrgios at plus 230. For the spread here, you have minus 3 for Khachanov. You have plus 3 for Kyrgios. The over-under in game is set at 22.5. For the set spread, you have the over 2.5 sets at plus 155. You have Khachanov to win to win in straight sets at minus 105. You have Kyrgios to win a set at minus 125. Head-to-head, though, has been very, very close. They faced off 3 times, and every meeting has gone the distance, whether it was in the U.S. Open, whether it was in the Australian Open, or in Cincinnati in the past. Every meeting did go to a deciding set. So the history has been very close. Now, looking at the actual recent form, I know Kyrgios has been an absolute mess with injuries, did beat McDonald. There is a day off in between, so you can argue that he should be rested, but I do wonder how Kyrgios is going to feel physically after having to play once again, twice in the span of 2 days when he really has not gone into the second round of an event in a long time. Now, for the actual Khachanov form, not great either. Did lose to Shelton in straight sets in Indian Wells. Did beat Mensik, though, in 3. Lost to Tsitsipas in Dubai, which is really not a bad loss at all. Lost in 3, but Tsitsipas won the event. And he ended up beating Evans in the round prior to that. So, point is not really playing in great form. But the opponents he's lost to have been top 15 guys recently, like Shelton he lost to, Tsitsipas he lost to Medvedev as well. You get what I'm trying to say. I think you're looking at Khachanov being in a good spot to win this one. Kyrgios, yes, he looked fine. The serve isn't as, I'd say, potent as it used to be, and I question how he's going to look in the second match in this event. You might look at some breakers. You might see what the fast court's playing out, maybe a breaker or two, but for the value, I think it's Khachanov in straight sets. Like, I know it's going to sound a bit painful because you're kind of hoping Kyrgios looks sharp because tennis is definitely more entertaining when he's good. But based on the matchup and based on the recent opponents that Khachanov faced off against, he tends to beat the opponents he should beat, and he really should beat Kyrgios. So I'll go with Khachanov in this one in straight sets at around minus 105. Moving on to the next one. We're going to look at a matchup between Medvedev and Munar. So for this one, they have no head-to-head history, which is kind of surprising. They've been around for a long time. Medvedev, though, is a massive favorite. He is around minus 500. Munar is plus 395. For the spread, you have minus 4.5 for Medvedev, plus 4.5 for Munar. The over-under game set at 20.5. For the set spread here, you have Medvedev in straight sets at minus 155. You have Munar to win a set at plus 130. The over 2.5 sets is plus 190. Now, Medvedev, we know, has not won a title in basically 2 years at this point, and he's been really annoying on this podcast. However, he was in pretty good form in Indian Wells, did lose to Rune into the semis, but he did only drop 1 set before that. He had a decent run in Dubai, winning a couple matches, then did lose to Griekspoor in a match he probably should have won. The point is, he's been playing fine. Munar's more of a clay guy. Yes, he was good on hard court earlier this year, but that was kind of fluky. Did beat Rinderknech in the first round. I'm not a Rinderknech guy. It's well documented. I don't think Rinderknech is very good. Did lose to Nishikori in Indian Wells in 3. At the end of the day, though, I think minus 155 is pretty cheap, actually, for Medvedev in straight sets. I understand that the courts are playing faster, but Munar's not a great server. So that actually should benefit Medvedev, if anything. But I think you're looking at Medvedev winning in straight sets, maybe a competitive set in there. But I just see a bad matchup for Munar, who wants to rally as a clay guy. We know Medvedev loves to rally too, and Medvedev does have the much better serve by a wide margin. So give me Medvedev in straight sets here at minus 155. I think the price might seem expensive, but I don't think it actually is. So I'll go with Medvedev in this one in straight sets as my main play. Moving on To the next match, going to look at the matchup between, where do we want to go for this one? We'll go with Monfils and Leheshka for this one. So Monfils is a dog after having the nice 3-set win against Morozin. Leheshka is minus 148. You have Monfils at plus 128. For the spread, minus 1.5 for Leheshka, plus 1.5 for Monfils. The over-under in game set at 23 flat. For the over 2.5 sets, you have plus 135. You have Leheshka to win in straight sets at plus 160. They faced off once before, faced off in actually a clay event about 2 years ago, and you saw Leheshka win in straight sets. Now, Monfils has been playing fine lately. Beat Morozin, had an okay run there in Indian Wells, beating Struff, beating Korda, and then losing a marathon to Dimitrov. For Leheshka, he's been fine. Not great lately, though. He was okay in Doha, beating Alcaraz, and after that, his body kind of fell apart. Because he lost to Draper right after that, which turned out to be a very good loss, because Draper won in Indian Wells a couple weeks later. And we know that that is a very important event in general on the calendar. But Leheshka has not been great since beating Alcaraz, did lose to Draper, did lose to Humbert, and did lose to Norrie. So he's on a 3-match losing streak. But I think we'd agree that Monfils is, he's better than Norrie, but I think he's worse than Humbert, and I think he's worse than Draper. So based on that, I think that there might be a little bit of value on a close match here. I think Leheshka should win, but I like the over 2.5 sets. I think you're looking at what should be a marathon. Monfils, we know, can rally. And Leheshka has firepower, but he can get in his own head at times, and he can spray some unforced errors. I like the different, I'd say, approaches that both guys possess. Leheshka being a bit more, I'd say, willing to fire, and Monfils being a bit more rally tolerant. I see a very close match here. I think that you can make an argument Monfils alive based on Leheshka's current form. But I think the over 2.5 sets of plus 135 is pretty appealing. So go with that as my main thought for this matchup. Moving on to the next match. I'm going to look at the matchup between Bublik and Paul. Now, shout out to Bublik, who's made us a lot of money over the years, whether we backed him or faded him. And as the Bublik Whisperer, which people call me on this show, we got it right again in the first round because he was able to get the job done in straight sets against Baez. Not the easiest matchup here in the second round, as Paul is the favorite at minus 340. You have Bublik at plus 280 for the spread in games. You have minus 3.5 for Paul. You have plus 3.5 for Bublik. The over-under in games is set at 22.5. Now, for the set spread, you have Paul in straight sets at minus 120. Bublik to win a set at minus 110. The over 2.5 sets is a plus 145. Now, Bublik did look really good in the first round against Baez, and he, of course, he made the final in the Challenger event before losing to Fonseca. So he has been fine. As for Paul, though, he was good in Indian Wells, ended up beating Boyer, beat Norrie, then did get killed by Medvedev, losing the final 8 games of the match. But you're looking at Bublik, who I mentioned before has been up and down all year. Now he's kind of in a positive swing. Head-to-head, though, drastically favors Paul, as Paul is 4-1 in the head-to-head. But there is one thing I want to mention. Each of the 2 career hardcourt meetings did go to a third set. So you might end up seeing a bit of a marathon here. Wouldn't totally shock me. I think the argument here, though, is that Paul should win. Keyword should. But I'm going to give Bublik a shot here. I think Bublik can keep it somewhat competitive. I think it should be a fun matchup. So I think Bublik can actually keep this match respectable. I'd say respectable. I think 3.5 games, if you want to find 4, I don't mind. I think it'll be a close matchup. Maybe the over is worth a look, but I see a close matchup. I think Paul wins. I'll give him a competitive 2, but I think he might get a breaker in there, so I don't mind the potential over for this match. But I think, once again, I think Paul's a guy who can kind of underwhelm at times, which I'm sure all of us are aware of. Bublik, though, has looked good over the last week, and I feel like the price feels a bit disrespectful because of it. So give me Bublik plus the 3.5 or plus the 4. I think it's definitely worth something in my opinion. Moving on to the last match of the first day, you have Goffin against Alcaraz. Alcaraz is a massive favorite, obviously, minus 2,500. You have Goffin at plus 1,250. For the spread, minus 6.5 for Alcaraz, plus 6.5 for Goffin. The over-under in games is set at 18.5. The over, though, is a plus 115. Faced off 3 times. You saw Alcaraz win all 3 meetings, but they faced off in an exhibition in 2023. Alcaraz won a final set breaker, or final set tiebreak, I should say, 10-8. Faced off though in hard court, and Goffin actually beat Alcaraz in Astana a couple years ago, 7-5, 6-3. And you saw Alcaraz beat Goffin 6-3, 6-3 in Adelaide back in 2021. Now, Goffin did lose a set to Vukic, but he ended up bouncing back. He's been okay recently, not great by any means, but I think that Alcaraz might be a little bit too big of a favorite in the spot for me. I understand the argument is that Alcaraz is going to win, obviously. Can I see a 6-3, 6-3 final? Sure. I think 6.5 is a lot of games. Like, I think Goffin, who's proven in the past he can somewhat hang with Alcaraz. I know that he's older now. He's not as good as he used to be. But Goffin, I think, can do enough to keep the match close to some degree where he covers. I don't want to lay 6.5 with Alcaraz. I'd rather get 6.5 with Goffin. But the line feels so massive. I'm going to go with Goffin in this one. Probably not going to bet it, but based on the actual price itself, I think that this price feels, or this line feels a little bit disrespectful. So I'll go with Goffin to cover this very large spread. Moving on to the next day, you have Fokina against Tiafoe. Not going to spend much time on this one. Give me the over 2.5 sets. You know my thoughts on these guys. They're head cases. Faced off in Acapulco a couple weeks ago. You saw Fokina choke away the second set dramatically, and then Tiafoe did eventually lose the third. But 2 of the 3 meetings went to a third set. Tiafoe, we know, drop sets left and right. We know my thoughts on him. They're well documented. Fokina has been better this season, but he's still been a head case. It's why he has lost in 2 separate finals this year. And I do think that you're going to see a marathon unfold. Give me the over 2.5 sets in that one. Moving on to the next match we're going to talk about. We're missing some lines, by the way, so apologies if you were looking for a match that we don't have. I'll go to Rune against Opelka in this one. You have Rune, who's off the bye after making it all the way to the finals in Indian Wells against Opelka, who did beat Eubanks in the first round, and we know that Rune is a decent favorite, minus 227. You have Opelka at around plus 175. For the head-to-head, no history. So the question is, can Opelka serve well enough to win a set or even to pull off an upset? He did beat Djokovic earlier this season. The problem is Joker lost to Zanschulp, and you're kind of wondering if Joker's washed or not. So based on the actual court speed and based on the actual talent disparity here, I think you're going to see Rune win, but a close match. I think that Rune is going to have a hard time breaking because the serving is going to be very, very dominant for Opelka. The problem is he's still not a great returner, and I think that Rune can extend the points, showcase the overall variety, and I think he'll do enough to win. So give me the over in this one. I think you're looking at what should be a breaker and probably maybe a 6-4 in there. But I think if you ended up seeing 3 sets, it wouldn't shock me either. But I'll go with Rune in this one with the over for the games. I think you'll see a breaker, which should definitely help out. Maybe the first set over, if you want to consider that. Maybe it takes Rune some time to adjust the court speeds. Either way, give me the over in that one for, once again, the Rune and Opelka match. Moving on to a couple other matches to talk about. So we have no lines on the Mensik and Draper match, which is definitely one of the matches of the round. So apologies, can't really break it down. Same thing with Fonseca and Humbert. We have no lines, so apologies, cannot really talk about it. Moving on, though, to the Thompson and Perricard match. So Thompson's plus 110, Perricard's minus 137. Faced off 2 times before, both on, I should say one was on hard court, one was on grass. One was last year at Washington, and Thompson did win 7-5, 6-4. Faced off in Den Bosch, and you ended up seeing Thompson win 6-4, 7-6. Now, Perricard's been fine, kind of up and down. Common theme here. He wins one round, he loses the next round, and you kind of rinse and repeat. For Thompson, though, he kind of went off the grid a bit as he made a deep run into the Indian Wells doubles, but for the most part, not done much in singles. Lost to Borges in the Australian Open, did lose to Moutet in Indian Wells. Then he ended up beating Giron in 3 in the first round here in Miami. I think that it's a close matchup, but I think Thompson has a slight edge in the head-to-head, and I think that based on the price alone, I see value on Thompson. I think that Perricard's a guy who can definitely win, but I see a close match, maybe a breaker or 2. I like the over. I think you might end up seeing 3 sets. But Thompson, we know, has the overall talent to win an ATP title, to win on hard court, I mean. And we know that you ended up seeing Perricard win a hard court event last year, and you ended up seeing him win a clay event as well. But I think you're looking at the current form of Perricard being a little bit underwhelming, and I think that Thompson can do enough to get the job done. Thompson, it's kind of weird to describe his actual game. I'm going to describe him as crafty. It feels like he's not the most talented guy on tour by any means, but he just finds ways to win matches through tennis IQ and through, I'd say, just smart shot selection. Yes, he can choke at times. I'm aware of it. But based on the value, I don't see much on Perricard to me. I think that Thompson, who's been good in the head-to-head against him, has some value at plus money. I'll go with that as my thought for that one, with the over, of course, in that matchup. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up, actually, for the breakdown of the second round. Apologies, there are a couple of really good matches we have no lines on. You have Fritz Sonigo, for example, Bergs and Rublev. We don't have lines on either. We're missing a bunch of lines as far as I'm concerned, so apologies if we have to skip some stuff it is what it is. We're going to have to move on, though, to the lock and dog picks. Before we get into that, though, remember once again that we're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Underdog, because you can play Underdog Pick'em, and you can also win a bunch of money when it's 100 times your money when you do play Underdog Pick'em. And a reminder, sign up with the promo code SGPN, you claim a special pick in the first time deposit offer up to 1K bonus cash on fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by our sponsor, Edge Boost. As Edge Boost has the Premier Rewards debit card for bettors, and you can also use it to avoid being hassled by having your card denied at the sportsbook or DFS site. So that will not happen when you use the Edge Boost card. You'll also get cash rewards, $50 per month of cash rewards by using the card. Money safe, the card's FDIC insured, and best part, no credit checks, completely free. Sign up for Edge Boost and enter our free $2,000 bracket contest at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/bracket. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished breaking down the second round in Miami. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I'm going to go to a matchup I would say that I gave some foreshadowing, but maybe it was a misdirection. Because I mentioned before, Djokovic might be washed. However, I do love his matchup quite a bit against Hijikata, and I am going to go with Hijikata team total under 8.5 at -130 on DraftKings. Every other book has 7.5, so DraftKings went rogue. I'll gladly pay an extra 10 cents for an extra game. But you're looking at Djokovic winning in straight sets at -260. He's expected to dominate in this matchup. Faced off one time in their careers. It was in Brisbane last year on hard court. Hijikata only won 6 games. But the issue that I have with Hijikata, I know he had a marathon win against Medjedovic, a good win for him there. However, if you're talking about the actual styles of play, the problem I have is that I don't know any areas that Hijikata can really damage Djokovic in. Djokovic has been bad in Indian Wells for a while. Not going to read into it too much. But Hijikata loves to rally, not a great serve, and you're looking at a guy who he's against who's better than him at every area. It's one thing if you're a dog and you can serve very well. The problem is Hijikata really can't. And I think Joker will be motivated after the embarrassing showing against the Zanchop in Indian Wells. But I like the overall spot. He's won this event, I think it's 6 times. But give me Hijikata, team total under 8.5 at -130. I think it's a good spot to back Joker off a pretty bad tournament there in Indian Wells. But I like the matchup first and foremost. And I did give out Joker to win the quarter. So I do think Joker is in a pretty good buy low spot to beat up on a guy who plays a worse version of his game. Give me Djokovic to dominate. Give me Hijikata, team total under 8.5 at -130 as my lock. For my dog, I'm going to go to the Hallis and Musetti match. Give me the over 2.5 sets at +145. 5 Musetti's last 7 matches have gone to a deciding set. So the point is Musetti, or I should say have not ended in straight sets. So Musetti has been winning recently, but not comfortably. And I can see Hallis definitely posing a threat to him after we saw him make the deep run in Dubai. Hallis is a pretty good hardcore player. He can be streaky. Seems like he's on a positive upswing. But Hallis has lost a set, at least one set in 4 of his last 7. So his matches have really not been easy either. But Musetti has gone to once again, has not won in straight sets in 5 of the last 7. And you are looking at the only head-to-head meeting taking place a couple years ago, but it was on hard court, did not end in straight sets either. Give me a close matchup between 2 guys with different styles. Musetti, we know, likes to stand back on the court and does love to try to keep the ball in play. And you're looking at Hallis, though, who can come forward. He can volley a bit. He'll be aggressive, and I think that based on the different play styles, you're going to end up seeing a couple of ebbs and flows, which should result in a 3-set marathon. Give me the over 2.5 sets as my dog because of it. So once again, the plays here for the lock and dog in Miami for the second round. The lock's going to be on Hijikata, team total under 8.5 games -130. For the dog, I'm going to go with Hallis and Musetti over 2.5 sets at +145. That's wrap it up. I'm back once again for the third round of Miami. Until next time, find me on Twitter, Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show, the MLB show, and a reminder, you can also leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you do like the content. And also a reminder, don't forget to check out the merch store on the SGPN website for Tennis Game Podcast merch. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.